Imagine a world where generosity, collaboration, and caring are the norm. A world that's within your reach. I'm Gale West, and this is Reality Reimagined, where we break boundaries, elevate your spirit, and turn your world into something extraordinary. As the best-selling author of Money Come Dance With Me and your guide on this incredible journey, I'm here to challenge the ordinary and introduce you to the extraordinary. We stand at the edge of one of the most thrilling evolutionary leaps in human history, from unraveling ancient mysteries to diving into cutting-edge science, spirituality, and the emerging economies. This is your front row seat to the future. Together with visionaries from around the globe, we'll explore who are we and who are we becoming, and how can we reshape reality. Reality Reimagined begins now. Get ready to transform. Hello, this is Gale West, and we are on Reality Reimagined. And I have my friend and mentor, Dick Schwartz, as my guest today. Hi, Dick. How you doing?
Gail, always great to be with you.
Yeah. So now, Dick, and let me read your bio. This is very profound. Dick Schwartz began his career as a family therapist and an academic at the University of Illinois, Chicago. There he discovered that family therapy alone did not achieve full symptom relief, and in asking his patients why, he learned that they were plagued by what they called parts. These patients became his teachers as he described how their parts formed inner networks of relationship that resembled the families that he had been working with. He also found that that when they focused on and thereby separated from their parts, they would shift into a state of characterized by qualities called curiosity, calm, confidence, and compassion. He called that inner essence the self. I was amazed to find that even in severely diagnosed and traumatized patients, this self was available. From these explorations, the internal family systems IFS model was born in the early 80s. IFS now is evidence-based and has become a widely used form of psychotherapy around the world, actually, particularly with trauma, provides an optimistic and empowering perspective, a practical and effective set of techniques for working with individuals, couples, families, and more recently, with classrooms and corporations. How cool is that? Dick lives with his wife, Jean, near Chicago, and close to his granddaughters and his growing number of grandchildren. Welcome, Dick. So happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you, Gail. Thanks again.
So since this is the Reality Reimagined, I ask every guest that I have on my show, what is their imagined new reality for the world? And what brings you hope at this time?
Okay, so in my vision, which came to me many, many years ago, I've known you a long time, but even before our relationship, was once I got that these parts aren't what they seem, that they actually deserve to be listened to and loved, and that the self existed inside of everybody that you described in the intro, that the new reality would be that became the paradigm for the culture and that for the human mind, and that people would not only think of themselves that way, but also would relate to themselves and to each other entirely differently based on that new paradigm.
That's a beautiful vision.
Thank you. Yeah, it's
And you've held it for how many years?
this is 41 years.
Oh my God.
I got started in 1983. Yeah.
Wow. It's fascinating, Dick, that and I've known you a long time, and you struggled a lot with bringing this to the world. In the beginning, people were going, "Hello, what are you doing?" and it's worldwide.
Yeah, it's sort of a dream come true, although some of my dreams are even bigger. But yeah, the degree to which it's kind of exploded in popularity is remarkable. The last decade, I would say, there were, 30 years in obscurity, and then all of a sudden it's a big deal. So that's gratifying and a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I'm overall just really glad it's gotten here.
So going back to the other question, what brings you hope?
Hope. So as it becomes more uh, accepted and more people are healed by it, then I have more and more hope that it can become that paradigm and become more widespread, even not just in the therapy world, but also in the culture, in the public.
So one of the things that you've talked about in your latest book, which I actually highly recommend, No Bad Parts, it's such a beautiful, beautiful book and a testament to the human soul and the human body and the who we are and what's possible for us. So I highly recommend that book. But you talked a lot about the four legacy burdens that are societal and cultural.
Mm.
And do you want to go a little bit more into that? Because what we're going to talk about today is one of those legacy burdens and how it's really affected so many people, which is the legacy burden of patriarchy. And tell us a little bit more what burdens are and what do you define as legacy burdens, Dick?
Yeah. So basics of IFS are that we all have these parts, what I call parts, other people call subpersonalities, and that's the natural state of the mind to be multiple that way, that it's valuable to have all these different parts with their different perspectives and resources and qualities. But that trauma and attachment injuries and things like that force them out of their naturally valuable states and into roles that can be quite extreme. And again, there's a direct parallel between external families where kids are forced out of their naturally valuable states into extreme roles by the dynamics of the family. So once a part has become traumatized, it takes in the emotions and beliefs that come with the trauma or that it experienced during the trauma. And those we call burdens. So it becomes burdened with these beliefs and emotions that thereafter drive it almost like a virus.
Mm-hmm. So, for
And
example, fear,
yeah,
um,
um,
anger.
before they were hurt, we had these lovely inner children who provide a lot of playfulness and creativity and joy in our lives. But after they get hurt or terrified or made to feel worthless, now they carry the belief that they're worthless, or they carry the belief that the world is very, very dangerous, and they carry the terror. So, so that's the burden that comes into them, and that we get many burdens from our direct experience in life, like I was saying, but there are also burdens that enter us that are just floating around in the culture
Yep.
and in the form of extreme beliefs mainly, and then some kind of emotions. And those also have a big impact on certain parts of us. And so we all, having, you and me anyway, grown up in the US, have a lot of the kind of common cultural legacy burdens that you get here. And in the book, I tried to think of the four that I thought were the most pernicious because there are many, many of them, all
Yeah.
the
Right. Right.
isms. But the four I came up with, we mentioned are patriarchy and racism and individualism and materialism. And again, these are the belief systems that drive our culture and then derive the people in the culture. And yeah, so that's what I mean by burdens.
It's interesting because there's a lovely book called The Virus of the Mind, and it talks about how these viruses attach to us. And you mentioned earlier that they are kind of like a virus,
Yeah.
and they are in the general soup of the environment that you can't help but taking on.
Mhm.
That
Yeah,
is you because they're everywhere. That's from the beginning of our, especially now with the media, it's really hard not to take them on.
totally. Yeah,
And
and when because we grew up in them, we hardly even notice that we have them. It's
yep,
just seems like the way the world is.
we're like fish swimming in the water of trauma burdens.
That line, the fish are the last to know about water.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So, racism, patriarchy, um, materialism, and individualism.
Mhm.
And those, if we think about that, that is basically what is driving a lot of trauma in the world, a lot of basically disconnection from each other. When you have individualism, you have racism, it's the otherness, the whole idea of othering. And then it's destroying the planet basically.
True.
And it's disconnecting us from our essential self and disconnecting us from the fact that we are all connected.
Yeah. Now, the good news is that once you identify such a burden and you find the part that carries it, it's possible to unburden, to unload it. So that's a lot of what we do with legacy burdens, actually. In some ways, they're easier to unload because it didn't happen from some trauma in your life. You don't have to witness that. You can just ask the part if it's ready to let it go.
So let's kind of go into kind of the how patriarchy kind of happened, the effects of that, not only on men and women and men, and kind of look at what would the world be like if we could heal on both sides.
I don't know how it happened exactly. I mean, I think it's probably remnants of um, many, prehistoric even times when men had to be strong to protect the women. That would be some of my speculation about it, but I don't know otherwise.
Well, if you think about way back when there were female gods and male gods, whatever, when women were, when the feminine was acknowledged as a part of the creation, and then God became a man. Hello.
Mhm.
And then the whole idea of, if you think about the Western world, that women were ultimately the cause of sin and the cause of trauma and the curse of Adam and Eve.
Yeah,
The whole idea of, and it's all women's fault.
right.
That's yeah, that could be part of it.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly added to it. I don't know if it was where it was the source of it, but it seems like the patriarchy might have been around, which led to the creation of God as a man and led to the other things you mentioned. But yeah, I don't know what the actual source of it is.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about that. But as you feel into it and know what you bring to the table as far as how that might have uh, damaged men and women, what is your sense of culturally, societal, how that has affected us as a culture, as a society?
There are many different levels to that question. So, there's been feminist movements for a couple centuries in the US anyway, that have tried to counter the perniciousness of patriarchy and have made a lot of progress. And and it still persists. And the current presidential candidate actually embodies all those four in a pretty severe way. So there's no question that it exists. It's just that there are lots more people that are aware of it as a not using this language, but as a burden,
Yeah.
who are working to not have it run their lives so much, both men and women. But yeah, the damage from patriarchy, uh, again, that's a many-level question. The internal damage, which has been a lot of my focus, has been that women often wind up with parts that think they have to take care of everybody in order to uh, survive, really, and to please everybody. And that has its own damage, like most, uh, many illnesses are the product of that particular one, with this big, massive caretaking part, not letting people take care of themselves. And then the parts who want them to take care of themselves will give them medical symptoms to try and get their attention.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we found, for example, with the study we did, based on which we're evidence based, with rheumatoid arthritis. And by simply having people focus on the pain and get curious about it, they heard from the parts that hated the massive caretaking part. This was at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston with Irish Catholic mothers. And as we worked out some kind of time sharing arrangement between the caretaking part and the ones who wanted more of a life, the symptoms started to get much better, even went away in some cases. So that women get stuck in this caretaking role and that they don't take care of themselves as a result is a product of patriarchy. And I could go on about all the different kinds of burdens that accrue from that, but that's one example.
I know a lot in my work with women, many of them struggle with trying to create a life and a feeling of success based on what feels right for them, and struggle with, well, the way that they're supposed to be is not the way that it feels right, but that's the way that they're told to be, and that's the way that business is supposed to be, competitive, blah blah blah. And it doesn't, that, they want to redefine how they do business, but it's really difficult. And I remember in the 80s, there were so many women that were on the books that, the rules that mother never taught you how to play. Like, and honestly, when you knowing the rules and trying to follow the rules isn't a place of power.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so many women and also have imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
That's another thing that women struggle with.
Yeah, and there is a sense of being defective somehow. That's a legacy burden from patriarchy,
Yeah.
and when you feel like you're defective or you're not valued, not valuable, then you're going to have parts that are going to try to prove you that wrong and be very good and compliant and not only caretaking but also in looking perfect and uh, with a big focus on appearance. I came initially out of the eating disorder field, and that particular burden uh, women have in spades. This worry about what people think constantly and how you
Yeah.
look, all of that men don't have either, nearly to the same degree. And yeah, so there's this sort of general sense of you've got to earn some kind of value that uh, is pervasive and comes through patriarchy.
Yeah. That's really intense.
Mm-hmm.
So many, so many women struggle with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And no matter what they do, it's never enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No matter how successful they are, it's never enough.
Yeah. And there are all these external constraints that are the culture provides, but my focus has been on the parts of women that buy into that and keep them small and are hypercritical of all, perfectionistic about all these things. And when you get somebody to focus on that critic and get curious about it rather than hate it or fear it, what people learn generally is it's afraid if it doesn't yell at you all the time that you're gonna get big and then you'll get hurt. You know, you start showing up in a different way, and it's trying to keep you down so that you don't get hurt. And there's, centuries of legacy burden to get passed from woman to woman to keep them down that way. So there are external oppressors and there are internal oppressors, and helping those critics unload that piece of patriarchy is very liberating.
Yeah. I think about the prophecy of the indigenous peoples in South America that the wings of the Western world is the eagle, and the that it's been flying and it's been strong, but doesn't have heart. And I think part of what we're saying is that that's been a result of the fact that, when women bring their who they are into intuition and are allowed to fly, that heart can be helping the world and transforming the world to more of a heart-based world.
Yeah, no question about it. That women have much more access to their heart, and that in a male-dominated competitive culture, that isn't necessarily an advantage, but it would help the world a lot if they had more access.
It'd be, we were talking about when you talked about hope in the beginning. So that's one of the reasons why I picked this, because we need women and men to heal this piece, because we need to have that more feminine, heart-based energy that's going to heal the planet, that's going to bring peace on Earth.
Yeah, and for me, it isn't necessarily feminine, the heart-based energy. It's in men too.
It's men that they haven't had access to that either.
Yeah, it's in what I call self, and it's also in parts that patriarchy has made men not value. So
yeah, right. So we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we've been talking about how patriarchy has affected women and their parts, their internal parts and external parts. When we come back, we're kind of going to explore how it's affected men, and it's affected them deeply. And then giving a vision of what we can do to heal. Is that okay? Okay. We'll be back in a flash, and this is Gale West. And I have Dick Schwartz as my guest. Tune into Reality Reimagined on Transformation Talk Radio to expand your mind, elevate your spirit, and transform your world into something truly awesome. Reality Reimagined is an exciting, out-of-the-box adventure into what's new, what's old, and what's emerging. We are on the precipice of one of the most exciting evolutionary shifts in human history. Together with global thought leaders, we will explore who are we and who are we becoming. For more information, visit successwithsoul.com.
Imagine if you were truly flourishing, how would your financial expansion impact the world? Author of Money Come Dance With Me, Gale West is an internationally known speaker, creative catalyst, and business intuitive at Success with Soul. Work with Gale to create a new relationship with money as your friend. Link the soul of your business to the business of your soul with programs like Sacred Money Mastery, Akashic Records of the Soul, and more. To receive a healing money meditation, go to successwithsoul.com today.
Hey, I'm Gale West, and this is Reality Reimagined. We are back, and I have my friend and mentor as my guest, Dick Schwartz. We've been talking about legacy burdens, societal legacy burdens. We've been talking about, in particular, patriarchy and the legacy burden. And we've been talking about the effects that it's had on women. So this episode, I'd love Dick to talk about how it's affected men.
Yeah, much of the talk about patriarchy focuses on how men benefit from it, which is true, but at a big cost. And I'm speaking as a man, I'm aware of that, what happened to me and how limited it made my inner life. And again, that's my focus is on inner life stuff. So men, in contrast to women, are given the burden of performance and that you judge yourself by how much money you have or how productive you are, and also given a message that you're not valuable unless you can be extremely productive and attractive that way. It isn't so much about how you look as it is about your paycheck or your car you drive and so on. But I'm just doing stereotypes about patriarchy, but and also about how tough you are, which means how numb you are to many of your feelings. And there's a kind of contempt for vulnerability that's instilled pretty early that means that you're cut off from your more vulnerable parts. And there's a great cost to that. So you become dominated by these high achieving or critical, often very critical parts too, but critical of you, not so that they keep you down, but so they spur you to work harder or earn more and so on. And these parts call you names to try and goad you to do better that way. So it's just a different set of burdens for men, but it's no less costly to them in terms of taking them away from being a full human being, from being integrated. So they wind up with lots and lots of what I call exiled parts that until they, when I help them reconnect with those parts, it's like a big homecoming. But until they are able to, they're often not aware that they're missing anything. But a lot of those parts will give them different kinds of symptoms. So whereas with women, they're often rebelling against the big caretaking part. With men, the parts who would like to have more of a life are rebelling against the big achiever part. At least some of the men I work with who are generally big achievers and are giving sometimes physical symptoms to try and sabotage that part or get attention about the dilemma they're in. So, and then, it all plays out in relationships too, because somebody said it's a real heterosexual marriage is just a cosmic joke because men and women are so different, and putting them together is a dilemma for people, how to relate to each other. So and when women want more from their men, men are often confused. They're clueless. I'm bringing home a lot of money, and I do the dishes all once in a while. And what do you want from me? They don't, they're their buddies don't sit around and talk about emotions. So anyway, that's, again, I'm just kind of riffing, but that's what's coming.
And I was thinking about, I lived in China for a while, and now that there are there's more men than there are women, there's a real pressure that you're not even looked at unless you have a house and you have a car
As a man.
as a man. And there's one culture in China where if you cry, you are expected to kill yourself.
What? Really?
Yeah, totally. And that you cannot cry because it's such a horrible thing to cry. And if you're going to cry, you might as well kill yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, hello, like, human beings are sad and they cry and they have emotions and yeah. So that's taking it to a whole new extreme.
Yeah. And I played college football and I hung out with guys mainly. I was scared of girls. And so I know that well. I know that patriarchal legacy burden of toughness uh, and sexuality we haven't talked about yet either. And men are socialized, and I think that little squirt of androgen doesn't help to objectify women sexually and to base their value on how much women love their performance sexually. And so that gets in the way a lot too, because women, to generalize wildly, their interest in sex is often quite different. And so, yeah.
So I'm thinking about, you talked about racism as one of the other legacy burdens and how African American men have been really disenfranchised from the culture and how that has played out and in being able to be part of that culture and part of the white male culture. And that so many African American women actually, statistically, have more when it comes to between men and women, white women and African American women have more confidence actually than white women. And African American men, not so much, because there's always a sense of I'm trying to figure out the rules of the game. I'm not part of that game.
Yeah. I mean, not only that, but they're given messages on a daily basis often about their value in this
Yep.
US. And it's particularly hard to unburden when that's the case, when you're bombarded by the triggers that remind you about your second class citizen all the time.
Over and over and over again. Yeah.
So for Black men, it's a double whammy. It's both the patriarchal legacy burden and also the white supremacy legacy burden.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're talking about the effects on men and the effects on women. And I've worked with gay couples, and there's a similarity where one is more dominant than the other that gets played out. So it's fascinating because usually there's one that's more holds more of the feminine energy, one more holds more of the masculine energy, and those energies also get played out in those relationships. So it's really fascinating how endemic they are within our society. It doesn't matter whether you're gay or straight or whatever, they get played out. So you are about healing, and your vision for the last 41 years is about healing the planet. And you've been doing it one person at a time and then a lot of people at a time. But let's come back to our vision of what it could be, um, uh, and what we need to do as human beings, to honor how we are and who we are, and honor the connectedness of all creation. Because I think that's what you want. That's what you're bringing to the table. That's your vision, right, Dick?
Yeah, very much. So, um, so at the level of what I call the self doesn't carry these legacy burdens, and lots of interesting experiments. So, if you were a client and I wanted to find one of your patriarchal legacy burdens, I could have you imagine being with a man who triggers you and put that man in a room by himself, and could be Mark, and have him do or say something patriarchal, and then notice the parts of you that get triggered by it, and notice the battle inside about whether to deal with it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And it would help you get to know both sides. And so one side would be that critic that would say, don't get big, don't show yourself. And the other side would be the part that wants to be seen for who you are and wants to be equal. And so then from that, we would start to work with that polarization, work with parts on both sides. And the one who tries to keep you small may well carry that patriarchal legacy burden that women are inferior. And then we would, if that were the case, we would ask it, do you like having to carry this, or would you like to unload it? Because, like I was saying earlier, other parts who carried burdens that came to you from your traumas in your direct experience of life, we have to do the whole witnessing and then retrieving and then unburdening that way. But legacy burdens, if a part decides it doesn't want to have to carry it, we can actually just send out, unload out of their system. So anyway,
So I think what you're saying is it comes from somewhere else.
yeah, it's not inherent to you.
It's not, and that if we are able to identify it, and we can it's easy to let it go.
Yeah, and
that's profound. That's really cool.
Sometimes with some legacy burdens, there's resistance. Like I was working with somebody recently who had a Holocaust legacy burden, this Jewish person, Israeli, and I would say, do you like having to carry all this fear all the time? And the part would say, well, I have to. If I don't, I'm betraying my people. And so we had to work with all of that. But finally, when it did, it really felt a great deal of relief. And sometimes to get to that point, we have to invite the ancestors in who then say, no, you don't have to carry this for us.
Yeah.
But a lot of legacy burdens, yeah, we can just ship them out if the part decides it's tired of carrying it, and the parts feel so much lighter and take on totally different roles. Like the critic no longer wants to do that; wants to just be maybe your cheerleader in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, legacy burdens are fascinating that way.
Wow. I know for myself, what you're describing is something I've struggled with a lot. And it's been difficult to let them go, because you work and work and work at it, and then they pop up again. But recognize that it's a legacy burden that's got stuck on you, and it's okay to let it go is really powerful. That we don't have to carry these burdens, and that the more and more people that recognize them, that we can be free as a human race, that we can be free. And then what's so powerful is that we can connect then together. And I know that you've done a lot of work with connecting spiritually and connecting with the divine and recognizing that we are all one, which is really
Yeah.
powerful.
And my wife Jean has been focused on the anti-fat legacy burden that women carry.
Yeah.
That is you're just bombarded in the culture with that all the time. So, but she just wrote a book on that topic that came from a racial legacy burden about how fat black women were despised. And anyway, but
Wow. That's wild.
that's another one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big, big one for so many women.
Mhm.
Like how they look and how um, they have to be perfect. The idea of perfection and recognizing this is not the plane of perfection,
Yeah.
and that God loves our imperfections. We are perfect. Our imperfections are perfect in the eyes of the divine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go. We're going to take a little break. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about how that you talked about how women can do this, how men can, and then how people can find out more about your work. And then, hello, it's been great. So we're going to take a little break. And this is Gale West. You are on Reality Reimagined. And I have my guest, Dick Schwartz. Tune into Reality Reimagined on Transformation Talk Radio to expand your mind, elevate your spirit, and transform your world into something truly awesome. Reality Reimagined is an exciting, out-of-the-box adventure into what's new, what's old, and what's emerging. We are on the precipice of one of the most exciting evolutionary shifts in human history. Together with global thought leaders, we will explore who are we and who are we becoming. For more information, visit successwithsoul.com.
Imagine if you were truly flourishing, how would your financial expansion impact the world? Author of Money Come Dance With Me, Gale West is an internationally known speaker, creative catalyst, and business intuitive at Success with Soul. Work with Gale to create a new relationship with money as your friend. Link the soul of your business to the business of your soul with programs like Sacred Money Mastery, Akashic Records of the Soul, and more. To receive a healing money meditation, go to successwithsoul.com today. We're back on Reality Reimagined. This is Gale West, and I have my my friend and mentor of many, many years, Dick Schwartz. We've been talking about patriarchy, legacy burdens, how it's affected men and women, and what we can do to heal. In particular, we've been talking about how women can do to heal the legacy burden of patriarchy and how it's affected actually um, African American men and now we're going to talk about how men can heal this. And I know you've done a lot of work. It's so apparent, Dick, of the work you've done on yourself around your own legacy burden of patriarchy. And let's kind of go more into how men can heal.
Yeah, and I don't hold myself as a perfect role model. As you can testify, I've come a long way, but there are miles to go. And
Well, it's in our system. Hello.
yeah, and it was really in mine. And but in terms of some of the pernicious aspects of it, I have to say that I have tremendous respect for women that I didn't used to have. And I often see them as stronger or more wise than me. And so if I'm proud of anything, it's probably that I did that work. And as I said during the break, my wife Jean had a big hand in that because she really forced me to look at these parts that were carrying all that stuff. So yeah, so men can do it too. Because men are in a privileged position much of the time, they're not forced to confront it nearly as much as women. And so and also there's this whole macho guys don't do therapy, macho guys don't get vulnerable. All that is an impediment to actually doing the work. And like I said, I was a college football player, so I had a lot of that. And yeah, and this, I want to highlight this contempt for vulnerability as not only the impact it has on individual men, but it gets played out in a big way in the culture where uh, Trump, for example, just hates looking at someone who is vulnerable, has contempt for people that aren't making it in our culture. And uh, that's just an example of what he got from his father, who, from what I read, was a horrible patriarch. And a lot of men take in that legacy burden, which I'm sure was true for him, to protect themselves from the person that's hurting them, which would be his father.
Mm.
So they'll take in the father's energy to protect themselves from the father and also to try and drive them to be what the father wants. And so there are parts that carry that legacy burden in that form. And I'll often say, ask this part if it carries somebody else's energy. And it'll say, yeah, my father's energy. Okay. Does it like having to carry that? No, but it thinks it needs it because how am I going to make it in the world, or how it needs it to protect itself? And I'll say, ask the part how old it thinks you are. And they usually think you're still 5 years old or 6 years
5 or 6. Yep. Common.
old. And when they're updated, they're much more apt to be interested in unloading because they know it's not helping, it's not healthy. But they still often have a lot of fear about disappointing the father, or if I don't carry this, the father's going to suffer, um, or I need this rage to keep myself safe from my father. He's still alive. So there's a lot of negotiating that has to happen. But once they decide and once they get to know that self can protect them, they don't have to use these burdens to protect self, then they'll let them go. And that's some of what I did.
Mm-hmm.
I carried some of my father's energy, which, he gave me a lot of heirlooms in terms of values and lots of things, but he had, uh, he would have kind of rage attacks that would lead to being spanked while he was enraged. And so I had parts that carried some of that. So anyway.
And I think I remember that you weren't, your father was a doctor, right?
Huh? Yeah.
You were just a PhD.
Yeah. I had,
It's like you weren't a real doctor in
yeah,
his eyes.
this is a male burden also, that
Yeah.
I had undiagnosed ADD, and it saved me from that fate of being a physician because I wasn't a good student, but it drove my father crazy. I was the oldest of six boys, um, and was supposed to be a doctor. Three of my brothers are, and so I got a lot of messages from him about not being worth much.
Yeah.
And had I had a nicer father, the model probably wouldn't exist because I had to prove him wrong. And once I found this, I just grabbed onto it. But for a long time, I was using it to counter the worthlessness. I would need the accolades all the time to show that I was valuable, which again, having unburdened a lot of that, I don't need it anymore.
There's a power in that, to not have to prove yourself.
Very much.
It's like, if I think about it, like when you get to that point, like after my stroke, when I realized I didn't have to prove myself to anybody. Um, and that I could live, that being could inform my doing,
Mhm.
that's a real place of power.
Totally.
And it's not force, it's power.
Mhm.
The power of the divine, the power, that sense of personal power that everyone has. But your idea of self, that when the self is more in charge, then you can be in that place where you have nothing to prove.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, not always true, but overall,
Yeah.
I'm also proud of that. And, people say you're so humble for what you've achieved, uh, and it's hard earned. I agree. I'm pretty humble for what I've achieved, and I had to work really hard to achieve that humility.
Yeah, and it's a testament. So many people that I've known that have some kind of model, they never do their own work. They get to a point of being a, like remember back in the 80s, I was studying Gestalt and I was looking at Fritz Perls and I'm like, hello. And yeah, and you get to the point where you can write on your accolades and you don't even do your own work. And that's not who you are. You've done your own work.
Yeah, and
And
you get to
that's,
the point where nobody challenges you because you're up on a pedestal.
yep,
So
yep, yep. And that's not serving you or anybody else.
exactly, yeah,
And so being able to say, I don't have to prove myself. I can be in this place of just saying, wow, thank you so much that my dad was a shit. It gave me the opportunity to create this model
Mhm.
and to change the world in a way that, thank you. And just honoring the fact that you did struggle for many years um, to make it evidence-based.
Mhm.
And I know when you first started connecting with guides, that was really difficult for you because, hello, how can I talk as a psychologist about connecting to guides
Yeah,
and bringing spirituality?
yeah. And as I just turned 75 this year, so I'm at an age where I don't care that much about what, what people think, but
Does that feel good?
yeah, and I'm much more out of the closet about all that. And I still have some ambition to change psychiatry, which the more I talk about that stuff, the less likely that is. But
And it's a movement. And let's talk about the fact that IFS is a movement.
okay,
And from where I was when I was very first training was in the plant. It was in my apartment in 1996, and where you're around the world and
that's
you're global. And when I talk to people, oh, I'm going to be doing a training in Lebanon, and I'm going to be doing a training in Korea. That it's having a life of its own.
Mhm.
And something that is healing, that is so profound, that connects people to their essence, their essential self, has to have a life of its own. Because what you're doing is you're connecting people to their essence and their spirituality and their connection to the divine.
Yeah, and I trust now that has some much bigger like ripple effects. that that's some of what keeps me going is just the belief that the more self we bring, even when things look like they're getting really bad, will have some kind of ripple effect counter the bad stuff, which are driven by burdens.
Well, I love Jonathan Salk's work, The New Reality. I think we've talked about that, and where he talks about that epic A, which is basically what we're talking about, the paradigm of the legacy burdens of individualism and take whatever you want, and materialism and patriarchy, all those kinds of things, which has been dominating our society for a long, long time. And now there's a new reality that is emerging, which is has this more kind of what we call feminine energy of intuition, creativity, recognizing that we're all connected, is actually emerging. And when you have one epic kind of heading down and descending, another one ascending, in that middle place, you're always going to have disruption.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're seeing.
And again, I don't like it being associated so much with feminine. I think it's what I call self is not gendered. So all
Okay,
those,
let's take that word out, feminine. But
all-
it's healed people, healed
Yeah.
human beings,
unburdened.
unburdened, that men have access to their ability to be vulnerable, and women have access to their ability to shine and be powerful. And that is the place of healing. And so what we're seeing is that if you look around, you will see that it is a movement. And IFS is just one indication of people aching for this change. They're aching to heal.
Totally agree.
And what you're bringing to the table is giving them tools that they didn't have in the past to heal and to connect with their divine and their essence and their self.
Yeah, that going back to the original question of how I would reimagine reality, that's it. Just that this would be realized, that this is who we really are, and that it is possible to unload all this stuff we've been stuck with.
And in the words of Wallace Wattles, this is not a bad world, but in the good world in the process of becoming.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much, Dick. So this is Dick Schwartz, and you are on Reality Reimagined. Now, how can people get a hold of you, find out more about IFS and your many amazing books? And I highly recommend No Bad Parts, which is the latest book you wrote.
Yeah, our website is ifs-institute.com, and it's got links to all kinds of things there. And I'll mention my wife's book, which is called Unburdened Eating, Jean Catanzaro. And yeah, there are a lot of videos on YouTube, and we have an online program called the Online Circle that people can sign up and learn a lot of the basics. So, and I think we have a workbook coming out soon for people to actually do some of the work on their own.
Yeah. So this is Reality Reimagined. We are go live every second and fourth Thursday of the month at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 Eastern. And this will be on YouTube, and you can continue to watch this wherever you are, and Spotify. And thank you so much, Dick. This has been incredible. Any last words?
May the self be with you.
Yay. Self with a capital S. We have 1 minute left. What are the qualities of self?
So, calm, curiosity, compassion, clarity, confidence, creativity, confidence, courage, and connectedness.
Okay, then.
We call the 8 C's of self-leadership.
Yeah. And these are who we are as a human race and who we are as a human being. This is available to every one of us. You just take a moment and start learning about who you are.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to Reality Reimagined with me, your host, Gale West. Listen and watch live every second and fourth Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific on transformationtalkradio.com, where you will have the opportunity to expand your mind, elevate your spirit, and transform your world into something truly awesome. Reality Reimagined is an exciting out-of-the-box look at what's new, what's old, and what's emerging, exploring the questions, who are we and who are we becoming? For more information on hope and transformation for our new reality, visit me, Gale West, at successwithsoul.com.